Do you think this one will get out before Christmas, or do you think it's going to be after Christmas and everyone will be like, oh man, that's so late? And welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave. This is episode 33 of our great linear reread of A Song of Ice and Fire by a guy named George R.R. Martin. In this episode, we're going to be covering Arya 10, Jon 8, Jaime 2, Theon 6, and Bran 7. And we're covering about 4 days of the timeline. My name is Michal. I go by inkasrain on the podcast of Ice and Fire forums, and I'm joined by Hannah.
Hey, it's Shadow Baby on the forums.
Steve.
Hey, it's Steve on the forums.
Nymeria.
Hey, it's Nymeria on the forums and Mary in real life.
Joe.
Not on the forums, but I do promise this time not to just talk about.
And what are you even doing?
Well, Bean is not here to lead me astray, so I will do my best to focus on Song of Ice and Fire.
Okay, we'll see. We have also Lady Weaver.
Hi, I'm Sarah in real life, Lady Weaver on the forums.
And Pops88.
Hi, Pops88 on the forums, no in real life.
Okay, did I forget anyone? Okay, good. This is the call. All right, so anyway, we're going to get started with Arya 10, which is Hannah's chapter. The Sansa chapter took place on September 18th, and the Arya chapter picks up 8 days later on September 26th, but it's actually like the immediately preceding chapter in the published order. Take us away with the reread.
Okay. We pick up with Arya adjusting to life in Harrenhal under the Dread Fort occupation. She's contemplating the tar-dipped heads atop the wall and their former owners. She imagines what one would be like if it had belonged, what it would be like if one had belonged to Joffrey. And when the crows gather for the feast, they are joined by the former maester's raven, whose head is also on the wall of the hallowed castle. She wonders if he remembers his master. Many of the former castle attendants had been given the axe upon Lord Bolton's seizure of the massive Riverland ruin. She recounts the good wives lost as she draws water for Roos's chambers from the well. She is confronted by one of the surviving serving women. Goodwife Amabel points to her friend Pia's head and threatens that when the Bolton Frey takeover inevitably falls, Arya's head will be the first in line to replace hers. Arya tries to loose herself from the crazed woman's grasp. The new guard of Harrenhal had been punishing the serving women who warmed the lion dens by leaving them to roam the great halls naked and taken by the men at will. Amabel tells Arya that she may even have a go at her when Tywin returns, and that her former boss had an old splintery broom handle that would do nicely. In true Arya fashion, she attempts to bash the woman's head in with her bucket of water, but the weight of it causes it to be more of a drenching than a physical assault, and Arya warns her to stay away from her or she'll kill her. After she replenishes the sloshed out water, she continues on her delivery route. She reaches Lord Bolton's chambers, where she finds his pale, naked pink body being leeched, and in attendance are Qyburn, Steel Shakes Walton, and some dozen Frey men. They ignore her, and after she's filled the basin, is able to linger and hear their conversation. The Freys are encouraging Lord Bolton to abandon Harrenhal, fearing that should Tywin return, they would be unable to survive a siege. As autumn has begun, the lands have been reaved by war and the stores as well. Their garrison is foraging for food, and under siege, that final option would be lost to them. They advise that King Robb should know he has lost the war, since the Blackwater saw Stannis fall and the Reach united with the crown. They insist Roose implore the King of the North to bend the knee, since Winterfell is a ruin and his princeling brothers have been murdered. Arya musters all her strength to remain outwardly unfazed as this impossible news enters her ears and crashes through her heart and mind in a destructive cascade as cataclysmic as the doom of Valyria itself. She forces her eyes to stay as dry as Dorne and her body to stand as high and proud as the wall, frozen and unfeeling. Roose rejects the proposition to inform his own king and liege of his apparent defeat and dismisses his would-be advisors. He commands Arya to remove the leeches, and she snaps to, attempting to convince herself that some foul Lannister lies at work here and her home is intact after all. Qyburn reads Roose a letter from Walda at the twins, in which she prays for his healthy return so she can bear him many true-born sons to take the place of Domeric and be good true heirs to the Dreadfort. Roose has Arya burn the letter and instructs Qyburn to draft a reply to Sir Tullart instead, instructing him and Robert Glover's men to move down from the overthrown Derry family keep to take Duskendale. And then he prepares for a hunt, saying that the wolves outside the castle keep him up at night with their howling, and he means to quiet them and use their pelts for the comfort of his bed. As he leaves to pursue his query, he bids Arya to clean his chambers. She spends hours working on his rooms, including a great solar, and as she's tidying up his table, spots a map of the Trident, noting that River Run is not so very far away. When she's confident she's done a satisfactory job, she retires to the Godswood to get some needlework in before her lord's return. She practices her water dance with the sharpened broom handle, reciting her list as she thrusts and parries the grief out of her. By nightfall, the hunting party returns and Roose orders Arya to fetch his supper. She delivers it before she can stop herself. She questions whether Roose will take her with her when he marches from Great Heron's haunted halls. He chastises her for not heeding his dismissals and threatens to cut out her tongue, but ultimately he answers her. Vargo Holt will be left the gargantuan stronghold and be left her as his cupbearer. Horrified at this prospect, she returns to the Godswood, demanding them to show her what to do. She thinks she hears Ned's voice reminding her that she is a wolf. Quote, "When the winter comes, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. You are Arya of Winterfell, daughter of the North. You have the blood of the wolf." That night, she waits for Heron the Black's halls to fall silently into slumber and sneaks to the foundry to find Gendry. She informs him that she plans to escape and he tries to dismiss this as folly, but she spins a convincing yarn about Vargo Holt and his intentions to cut off the left foot of every remaining servant when he ascends to Lord of Harrenhal. Gendry agrees to help her round up swords and hot pie and food and seal themselves into the night. She returns to her bed to dress for the fight and visits Roose Bolton's chambers one last time, taking his map and his dagger. When they rendezvous outside the Tower of Ghosts, she has brought 3 horses, Gendry 3 steel swords, and hot pie some bread and cheese. The small gate that bars their freedom is guarded by one lonesome Dreadfort man. Arya instructs the boys to wait for her to dispatch him and to come quickly and quiet when she sends up her she-wolf call as an all-clear signal. It begins to rain. Boldly she approaches the guard as if on orders from the Leech Lord. His mail, she knows, can't be matched by the dagger, so she tricks the guard into bending his knees for her so she might be able to reach his throat with ease. Lord Bolton wants to reward all his brave guards with silver for their work, she tells him, tossing Jaqen H'ghar's iron coin at him with precision to make it fall just short, forcing him to bend down to claim it. Like a smooth summer breeze rippling gently through a pleasure ship's sails, the dagger slices through his neck as she recites Valar Morghulis, noting the joyous feeling the incantation brings upon her lips. As the small party hastens through the gateway of their deliverance and into the dark, Hot Pie in Shock declares, "You killed him!" Arya commands him to shut up and looks down at the blood on her hands, thinking to herself, "It's all right, the rain will wash them clean." And death.
So can we talk about for a second Roose's naked boardroom meeting?
Sounds sexy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why that stands out to me so much, but like, it's not even that he's getting leeched. It's not even that he's having this meeting while he's getting leeched. It's like, he's like a man without any normal human scruples, you know?
Yeah.
Possibly the most traumatic thing Eyes had to witness or do.
Oh, yeah, easily, for sure.
When I was reading this chapter, I noticed, I guess I kind of noticed before, but Arya just like has an issue with every single person wherever she goes. Like, she cannot walk 10 feet anywhere without being confronted by somebody. And I wonder if it's because, it's like that thing where if you know someone's a badass, like you kind of want to act tough so they won't mess with you. So I wonder if she's getting like that little intuition from these people, like, first day in prison, let's all act crazy so she won't come after us.
It definitely could be, but she'd also have the fact that she grew up as a lady, so everyone else might think she's really up herself, even though she's only a cupbearer, and they're like, bitch, get back in your place.
Yeah.
She's also rebellious in a society that, punishes that a lot harder than ours.
Well, and she's also responsible for weasel soup, which they all know. And
oh, right, they all know that.
It's gone a lot farther than just like, oh, new ownership. People are dead.
But I mean, even in like the chapters that when she's at Harrenhal before that shit still happens to her. And I don't know if it's like just a literary technique he used to kind of keep her chapters interesting before these like big bombs drop. Because that happens to her all through Clash while she's there, no matter who's, like, first it's the Mountain, and then it's Tywin, and now it's Bolton. And they all seem to have a very consistent theme of people picking on her, getting in her way,
She's Ta'Veren.
Do you think it's so George can write about how she deals with it? Because if you think about it, she, even before everything happened and Ned died, really, she was already making a list of people she didn't like, with like Joffrey being on it and Cersei after Lady died, and she had to run Nymeria off. So do you think it's how she's dealing with people and George is trying to write about that, and how everyday situations she's just blaming people and she doesn't seem to let situations go? She just holds on to all of her anger?
Yeah, maybe like he wants her to have so many run-ins so that, later when she is like just out there hacking people up, it doesn't seem so far out of the realm of possibility for like a fairly small child to, be a little assassin.
Yeah.
Would you say this is the chapter where that like really starts with this guard?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
I think so.
And I think the whole with her using the coin and then saying Valar Morgul is because she hasn't figured out what that means yet by now, right? In the books?
No.
Yeah, because there's this whole thing where she doesn't even know what it means. Like, I think he did that definitely on purpose to start down that slippery slope with her, for sure. Because she has killed before, but that was in defense, self-defense.
Like, the tragedy of Arya's killing to me is that, like, the progression of it is so sad and complicated, because you have the stable boy where she, I remember, like, blames herself. Like, she considers that murder, and she isn't sure if her mother is going to love her anymore if she knew that she killed the stable boy, And then you have this, which is both premeditated and terrifying and necessary, and like it like travels down a path to the point, like it's not clear cut, it's not simple, it's not just like, oh, A, B, C, Arya gets used to it. It's very different kind of parts of her that are being exercised through this killing,
Yeah, she's definitely not like, Bina always kind of talks about her as being a little like psycho.
She is a little psycho.
I can see that. Like, she does have like psychopathic traits, but she's also not just like, oh, I'm a friggin' murderer and I'm just gonna kill whoever. Her killing is always, in a sense, justified. I mean, like I was gonna say, one could argue this killing this guard to get out of the Dreadfort is a kind of self-defense, if not like a self-preservation. She's taking one life to save hers, Gendry's hot pies. I mean, she was sort of backed into a corner here.
Well,
and
I mean,
all her other killings, it's like that as well.
I don't think they all are, but I think it's very interesting how. I mean, I view Arya. I don't think she's a psychopath, but because I think even in this chapter, like George is very interesting, and like he takes her back and forth between like, I want to kill that person, blah blah blah, and also like, I hope they don't hurt the stable boy. And psychopaths would do that, So I almost think of her as like a cultivated. She's like a child soldier, She is conditioned into this, and it's not her fault, but it's also, like you watch the tragic progression of it, and I don't think that's like Arya wasn't destined to be a killer. It's
I
definitely...
don't think so either. Like under peaceful circumstances, I don't think she would have grown up to be like this at all. I mean, maybe more like her Aunt Lyanna and still badass and stuff, but not a killer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think she could recover?
Nope.
By now.
No way. I think she's too far gone, definitely, to have any sort of like normal resolution.
Unless she has a massive redemption arc. I'm using that term loosely, and she does a complete backflip. Doubtful, really.
The interesting thing about like a potential redemption arc for Arya is it's not that she needs to like atone, because she hasn't so far done anything that like we as the reader are like we can objectively say like, oh yeah, that's wrong, like that person died and Arya killed them, but it's not like, it's not Jaime, it's not shoving a child out of a window. But
to cover up a horrific crime.
Right, exactly. So like the thing with Arya is she doesn't need to atone, she needs to heal. And I don't know if like she's going to get that. I highly doubt she's going to get that opportunity.
I picture it as being like Frodo Undying Lands situation. Like she'll go off past the Lonely Light or something, and just kind of that's her journey.
They'll find her frozen in the snow, clutching needle.
Yeah, something like that. Like she'll probably either die in battle or just disappear.
I did just want to read this one quote that like, because I mean, Arya is so complicated because she does have this shit in her, like when she stood before the one-legged heart tree and raised her, she stood one-legged before the heart tree. The heart tree doesn't have one leg. Her foot is bleeding, which I guess is maybe important because I guess you could see it as a blood sacrifice. Maybe that's what makes her able to do this. But anyway, the heel of her right foot was bloody where she'd skinned it, so she stood one-legged before the heart tree and raised her sword in salute. Vala Morghulis, she told the old gods of the north. She liked how the words sounded when she said them. Arya's like Joan of Arc, like in a different situation, I could see her as like badass, like fighting at Rob's side, leading the North and, justice, blah, blah, blah. But,
Yeah, like if none of this ever happened, she probably would have grown up, met a chick from Bear Island, and they would have been lifelong roommates, quote unquote.
What is it called? Like a Boston marriage?
out there hunting bears together, companions.
About what you said, Hannah, that she was backed in a corner and didn't have any choice. I don't really agree. I mean, maybe her, yes, but for Hot Pie and Gendry, she's kind of selfish. She just wants them with her, and they weren't doing so bad at Harrenhal. I mean, they just had to lay low and keep doing the work that was asked of them, and they would probably have been kind of fine. I mean, not excellent, but it was kind of an okay life. And she just forces them to come with her, or kind of lying to Gendry. And I'm not sure this is really fair for them, because she takes them on the road again, and she clearly wants to be followed by someone, which I understand because she doesn't want to be alone. But they could have stayed at Harrenhal and be okay.
Yeah,
I totally disagree.
Hope comes in, don't you think their life expectancy goes way down?
Sure.
Anyway, even if he didn't recognize them, I mean, that's not.
Yeah, I agree with Hannah. I think that we see Harrenhal after, and it's really bad. I mean, like Gregor Clegane in charge, Ragga Hoat in charge, like at some point along the line, their odds of being murdered are way, way higher than their odds of surviving. I actually genuinely think, like, yeah, Arya is on a certain level not wanting to do this alone, but I do think that she thinks she's saving their lives, and I think that that's true.
And she told a lie, but I don't really think it was probably that far from the truth in actual fact.
Nope.
Yeah,
we see people with feet cut off, don't we, later?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
But, I mean, they already went that road before. I mean, being alone on the road, and it didn't really end well for them. And why does she believe that it's going to be easier this way? And I mean, in a sense, they got lucky with the Brotherhood without banners, but I mean, I agree that Harrenhal definitely isn't a good place to be, especially after Bolton leaves. But still, I think it's a bit selfish from her on some level. She thinks of them.
This is
not only.
This is a really tough call, I think, because Harrenhal does go really south, and so I guess Arya is right, but she's only right because she gets lucky, right? Like, I think she would have done the same thing even if it wasn't going to be Vargo Hoat. And for pretty much anybody else to take over, she would be, putting them in grave danger by running away. And they have everything to lose and nothing to gain by running away.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, do you know what? I completely disagree, because in her mind at this time, she's still, Rob's still alive, her mother's still alive. She wants to go north. She's still got that, inkling of home, and it's in this chapter, she still sort of reminds herself that maybe Roose Bolton isn't the bannerman to trust. I think it's even when in the Weasel Suit thing, when she's freeing the Northman prisoners, she's looking for like Glovers and people she knows are loyal to the Starks, and it's kind of Roose Bolton, I think, is just the final straw after all the shit she's been through. Just at Harrenhal alone is ridiculous. This has to be the final straw, and she sees her chance. She's never going to get a better chance, as Roose Bolton's cupbearer, to get maps and valuable. She orders the stable boy to get some horses ready and stuff. She's never going to have a better chance than this. She has to take it. And I think she's helping Gendry and Hot Pie by doing that. Obviously we have hindsight because it works out for Gendry and Hot Pie. But even at the time, I think it's just an opportunity and she has to take it. And that's just how I feel, really.
Well, they also know how horrible the mummers are. Like, that's the beginning of the chapter, that like, haha, the mummers are going out and like killing the people who helped them before when they were working on the other side. Like, she knows how. Like, obviously, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But I feel Arya's fear in this chapter, and I think that it is like really genuine and really warranted. Like, she's almost like the people that we read this time are actually really interesting because they're all kind of being hunted, but some of them are being hunted in place and some of them are being hunted while they're running, And Arya is being hunted in place and she decides to run.
I kind of see your point, Sarah, though, with like her being selfish by taking them, because it is like damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the only tipping thing is, at least when they're with her, she knows for a fact whether they're safe or not. So it's kind of like a power thing. If she brings them with them, she can be in control. Whereas if she leaves them, she'll always wonder.
Well, we'll put it this way: if Roose Bolton took hold of Harrenhal, decided not to leave and give it to Vargo Hoat, kept her on as cupbearer for a little while longer, I think she probably would have stayed a bit longer. And if he, didn't obviously eventually show himself to be a traitor. So I think it was a necessity. I don't know if it's this power trip thing. I mean, maybe to be, leader of a pack. So, as she talks about so much.
I think it's just that she sees how close Riverrun is and that she can get back to her family. I think you're right, what you said earlier, Noah.
Yeah, from her point of view, I definitely agree. That was the thing to do, the chance to take and everything. She had to go, and I understand why she did it. I'm just saying that taking Gendry and Hot Pie with her was in part, in my opinion, selfish. But she definitely had to go and took the chance when she had it. So
their fate has been tied to hers for quite a while now. She has been keeping them alive, really. And I think it's only natural for her to want them to come with her.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
And for the story, she had to take Gendry, at least.
Well, yeah. Earlier in the chapter, when she's standing in front of the heart tree, she hears the voice, and it's the lone wolf dies while the pack survives. So I think she's always thought of Gendry and Hot Pie as her surrogate pack. So she takes them with her so she doesn't die. And so they all survive in her mind. And because, yes, she is looking for Sansa and Jon, but she's always thought of those two boys as family as well. So she's taking them with her.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's a
I
great
agree.
point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Can we talk about that moment with the voice? Do we think it's Tree Bran from the future?
Yeah,
or-
exactly. Same question.
I don't know, because
So-
it's her father's voice, really. I guess Bran could be putting on
Well, because that's like quite a while down the road, right? Is he like maybe going through the change and has a deeper voice? So,
Maybe it's
or
just
like
the old
through
guy.
the tree
the
network,
change.
there's a lot of bass and reverb that comes through, so it sounds more like Ned.
Well, does he have to have his own voice when
Or
he
it's
speaks
in,
to a
like-
tree? That seems a bit limiting.
Oh well, yeah, that's a good point.
It could be in like 20 years and his voice has dropped and Arya's forgotten what her dad's voice sounds like and she's just like, you're close enough. You're dad now.
True.
Yeah, and she's not expecting Bran, who's still a little kid in the present time, to sound like that.
Yep.
Does it have to be Tree Bran?
No, I
It's
don't think
always
so.
So
True.
it could be a
Isn't-
memory of Ned, maybe.
Yeah, because isn't it something that Ned tells her at some point in book 1,
Yeah.
word for word? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think
I mean, we don't know for a fact that George came up with the Tree Bran idea yet either, so.
No.
Right. For the
Although-
record, I do think it is. I think it's going to be Tree Bran. I just don't. I'm not sure that I want time travel, even in a limited capacity.
yeah, I totally agree.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like this could go either way, but the voice has its own power. It's not just Arya's memories, because like you told me you could be strong,
Right.
and like that's obviously not what Ned said.
Yeah.
So I guess Bran could have like hopped to that, and it does happen in a Godswood. So
Yeah.
I feel like it could really go either way.
Yeah, it's. I think it's open. It's open for interpretation, and that's the point of it. Is that she's thinking, and her father comes to mind, and we also have the possibility that Bran is witnessing this through the Heart Tree, and I think it has to be left like this because it would be way too powerful if Bran could just tell something and have entire conversations with the other characters. So it has to be left uncertain like that.
Well,
That's
I mean,
the way
even
it
like,
works.
in a world without magic, right, in real life, like I lost my mom earlier this year, and sometimes like in like times of stress, I do kind of feel, and maybe I'm just comforting myself, but I feel like my mom is near me, or like there's been a sign, or I can kind of hear what she would say. Not that I'm like hearing voices, but it's a feeling,
Yeah, definitely.
And,
I can understand
like,
that.
I had a friend that was murdered, and I was like drinking, and I went to pop the top off one of these beers because I was like in my head, I was like, I'm going to drink this pain away. I went to pop this top off this beer, and it came flying out like a bullet, hit me right in the friggin' face. It hurt so bad. And my initial reaction was like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to drink my pain away. It's like, you could just say it's a coincidence, but I take those things as a sign because I do to some extent believe in that kind of stuff. And it could definitely just be one of those things where she's feeling that presence. And so it's becoming a more tangible thing than just an idea in this time of crisis.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to get like a solid answer on every single like maybe Tree Bran incident, I think
and I don't think we need it either.
Yeah. I think it'll be the important ones, but not something like this.
Yeah.
Also,
like
it
the
doesn't.
Theon thing is kind of bigger, but
Yeah, but this it doesn't even have. It has some of the markers, like it is in a Godswood, but it's not like Arya heard her father's voice in the whispers of the leaves. It's the wolf that reminds her, the sound of the wolf howling. So I guess,
and he carefully words it with the way it's written. Like, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's something like she thought she heard her. Felt like she heard. It wasn't like her father's voice came from the clouds and said.
Yeah. Although one of the next lines is, that night she lay in her narrow bed upon the scratchy straw, listening to the voices of the living and the dead whisper and argue as she waited for the moon to rise. They were the only voices she trusted anymore.
Oh, so maybe she is just a psychopath.
Oh, this poor girl. Anything more on the Godswood whispers? Because I just want to bring up the fact that we really, shame on all of us for not realizing that Roose Bolton was going to fuck everybody over Because he's like, I'm going to go hunt wolves. There is no symbolism here whatsoever.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
No, me neither.
But did anyone else get the significance of him saying all of those other lords to go and massacre the castle in Robb Stark's name? Like,
And Duskendale as well. Twice.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get that early. I mean, like, yeah.
No, in all these chapters, there are little things going, on a reread, you realise, oh, this has massive significance because it's George. But then you just skip right over when you're first reading.
Oh, yeah. With Roose especially, I think. Like, every reread, he's up to his betrayal so early and so obviously throughout all these chapters.
We totally should have gotten it. Actually, Michal, that's a really good one because they murder... Okay, there's 9 wolves and 7 are adults and 2 are pups. And so one could argue that's like Bran and Rickon, or like Robb and technically Theon. Like, they destroy their lives.
Even whoever it is, like, I feel like that should have jumped out, like, because it's not, it's not like subtle troop movements or quiet decisions or, because like in the moment when he's like, slaughter them in the name of the king, you're like, okay, maybe Robb sent a letter or something. You're not thinking on that level. At least I'm not. But on a symbolic level, like there's nothing subtle there. It really should have jumped out more. But
we even have Arya who's like thinking in her POV chapters that he's not trustworthy and she can't, reveal herself to him. And I remember on my first reread, I had it completely backwards. I was thinking, Arya, you're such an idiot. Roose is Robb's bannerman. Just roll into the hall. Like, I'm Arya Stark of Winterfell. You need to bring me back home right now. And of course, it turns out, she's dead right. I'm dead wrong. And Roose is obviously up to some betrayal.
Yeah, I had even seen the show through the Red Wedding when I first read this, and I was even thinking the same thing because I binge watched the show, so I didn't really put the whole Bolton plan together. And when I read the Red Wedding, I was still shocked by it, even though I'd seen it before. It's just so subtle, such a slow burn here with him that you really don't see it coming, and then later you think, oh well, I should have, but I don't think so. I mean, I think it's
and the Frey
so
Alliance.
Shocking. Yeah,
oh, for sure.
There's no way you would ever think an author would do that. I mean, Ned was already like, oh my god, you kill your main character, and then here's 20 more, just all in one go.
Yeah, well, the collapse of the Frey Alliance in this chapter, is that the only clue we get about Robb's marriage in this book, or do we learn it in Catelyn's chapter?
We don't learn anything. I mean, in Catelyn chapter, we learn that he was injured at the crag and he's being tended to there, but that's all we know. And I don't think we really learn about it until later.
Wow. Damn, George.
Can I ask a question? When I was reading this, I was trying to figure it out, and I could not come up with an answer, and I didn't look it up either. So this may be a stupid question. When Walda in her letter says to replace Domeric, who the fuck is she talking about?
It's Roose's first son who Ramsay killed.
Yep.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, by all accounts, a stand-up dude.
Oh, okay.
And he's the reason why Barbary Dustin doesn't trust Bran.
Okay, I remember that now.
Yeah, we'll get that later.
I totally forgot about him for obvious reasons. Do you like how the chick threatens to rape her with a splintery broom handle?
Oh. And the naked women being just held in the stocks and here, just rape them. That's. I think Roose Bolton might be the most evil character in the books, guys.
Yet.
Well, maybe Ramsay.
Definitely one of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
Yeah, it's Roose, Ramsay, the Night King, Joffrey.
just kind of backtracking slightly. Sorry, guys. That I think the first time we hear about Roose Bolton, he's talked about by Ned, and he says that he wanted to kill Barristan Selmy at the Trident or something like that, and it was Robert who said no and gave him his Maester. And I don't know. I think straight away from off the bat, you've got to hate the fucker if he wants to kill Barristan.
Did we like Barristan by then, though? Did we already know, or does that come before?
Oh shit! Yeah, from all Bran's.
We know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Idolizing.
Yeah, but even then, in retrospect, sure. But at the moment, it's tactics, and it's just advice from a random person in the middle of a complicated war.
Right.
And I mean, obviously it fits knowing who he is, but like before then, oh man. I hate him so much. I hate this guy.
My biggest thing with Roose is like he does seem to be one of those ones that's like a climber and, you know, kind of also take matters into his own hands. But I also did think of him, like up until the Red Wedding, I thought of him as somebody who like still with all that knew his place and wouldn't try to actually overthrow anybody, you know, but climb as high as he can without being like that much on the radar, because I thought he was smarter than that. But then when you read the World Book, and obviously it came later, like then you get this long history of the Dreadfort trying to usurp Stark power and be Warden of the North. So there is like a precedent there.
I wonder what Roose would have been like if he had been like a lord in King's Landing.
He would have been Littlefinger, but less with money, probably. I think he'd be quite scheming.
Yeah, I feel like he would have been into the king really quickly.
Definitely.
Did anyone else find it funny that Arya is like, who cares about your princess when she's talking to the squire? And she's the princess, obviously.
Yeah. I hope your princess dies, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Oh, man.
All right,
anything else on this chapter? Or
Not for me.
Let's move on.
An hour in, you don't think we've covered it all?
Still 4
Really?
to go.
Winding
All right.
conversations.
2 days later, we reach John 8, which takes place on September 28th, 299. We skip over 3 chapters in the published order to get there.
So John and company are trying to escape from the wildlings that are tracking them. But they can't get away because particularly cunning Eagle is staying overhead. One by one, Corran sends men away to try to get back to the Lord Commander with news of the wildling host. Last to go is Stone Snake, and then it is just Corran and John. They spend the night together, and Corran asks John if his sword is sharp, and they recite their oath to the Night's Watch. And then Corran commands John to yield to the wildlings when they're overtaken. He tells them that the Night's Watch owns his honor as well as everything else, and that John is going to have to defect and then join the wildlings for a time and wait for his opportunity to get back to the Watch and warn them. John is appalled by this, and at first he is not willing to besmirch his honor. Eventually, they're overtaken by Rattleshirt and a party of wildlings, including Egret. The wildlings have one of the watchmen's heads, but it's not Stone Snake. And John yields. Corran takes that as an opportunity to call him Craven and really plays it up. Rattleshirt commands John to kill Corran in order to prove himself as a defector. So John and Corran fight. John eventually slays Corran when Ghost gets in on the fight and bites Corran on the leg. Rattleshirt is still not trusting of John, but the rest of the wildlings accept him, and he goes with them. Egret tells John that the Eagle was once the man that was traveling with her who John killed when they first captured Egret. And I think that's the first indication we get of the warg or skin changer's second life. And that's it for me.
Yeah, so
Nice.
I gotta say, the is your sword sharp, Jon Snow? That line I find really affecting.
Yes, I agree.
In a sexual way?
No!
Oh, yeah.
I was going to
Affecting.
say, sorry.
Like touching.
Like he
And
knows what
that's a
this
bad
sword
word
is
to
gonna
That's
use.
not
do.
helping.
Touching in a sexual way.
Yes, guys. Yes.
Is that a dagger in your pocket?
Okay, so Jaime 2.
John, coward for using Ghost or not?
He didn't use Ghost, he took advantage of it.
Mate, his life's in danger. Ghost is going to react.
Yeah, I don't think he can control it enough to stop Ghost from attacking as well anyway. So I think Ghost just goes in, guns blazing, thinking it's for real.
It wasn't like he was controlling Ghost to attack Corran.
Right.
No, of course not. But he was fighting himself, and Ghost is going to defend him.
I mean, Corran wasn't
Good
exactly
rule.
going easy.
Well, that's what I mean. So I don't know. Maybe I mean, is Jon Snow actually that good a swordsman at this point?
He's meant to be quite good, isn't he?
I don't know.
Or is he that well trained rather than being great? It's more like he's been
Yeah, I think that's
very
probably
well
right.
trained.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't think he's as good as Corran. I think that the narrative kind of leads us to believe that. Like, obviously, Jon is shocked and freezing cold and whatever, but like, I think that I don't know. I don't know if like Jon and Corran had like, because it is a real fight. You know, Corran isn't whatever, but he also obviously doesn't want Jon to die. You know,
Right.
so I don't know.
I don't think he's as good as Corran.
Well, Corran's meant to be
on-
like the best ranger, so you would think
Yeah.
he's better than Jon.
On my first read, it did not seem noteworthy at all, Jon Snow's swordsmanship. I think to some extent, the idea that he is an exceptional swordsman comes from like post-show. Like, I think they play that up in the show. And I think that's seeped into the fandom's expectation of Jon a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Because
he's well
does it-
trained. I don't.
Yeah, he's not a slouch by any means, but I don't know. I never remember thinking of him as like somebody exceptional. And now he's on lists of, fighters that people from the books that people think are great. He's up there.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
you're right there.
but-
He's not quite a Loras or a Jaime before the whole hand thing.
Did you guys think on your first read? Did you think Stone Snake was important?
I was going to ask that. What happens to Stone Snake?
Isn't he the only one that makes it back?
He just.
Does he make it back? I don't.
I don't think he does.
I don't remember.
He was
Uh,
lost in the Skirling Pass.
According to the wiki, he's mentioned in the next few books, but he never appears again. Like Jon thinks,
Yeah.
so I wonder what happened to Stone Snake.
I think he just dies out there in the wild. Which, like on my first reread, I was sure this guy was coming back. I was waiting every Jon chapter. I was waiting for him to roll back in.
Maybe he's cold hands.
Yep,
He's not
No, maybe
dead
he's
enough.
Tyrek Lannister.
he died. He died
Oh,
long
by
ago,
Septon.
back in Jon 8. I do think this one is like just not a super important chapter on rereads. I don't think. I think the first time this chapter happened, I remember it was touching. This was like a big moment. And on rereads, I'm just like, yeah. And then Jon kills Corran, and we move on because I don't think we learn anything in this chapter that is, that comes up that's important later.
Does Jon ever dwell on killing Corran, as in, like, does he ever have that being a burden on him, or is it more like, oh yeah, I killed this guy, whatever?
I think there are some instances where he thinks about it, where he kind of sees it as his duty to like do especially well in the watch because, it's his fault that Corran is dead and like, he has to be worthy of Corran's sacrifice. So he thinks about it every now and then, but I don't think
Yeah, I
it's
feel
like
he has, maybe I'm making this up, but like times where he's like, I can't get caught because his sacrifice would have been for nothing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like at the time he's probably more overwhelmed by, well, not at the time, but, being overwhelmed by being called a turncloak to really worry about killing one of his own brothers, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sad situation. Like, I feel bad for Jon here because it's not like, obviously, he admires the man. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, a sad and difficult situation. And Corran knows that he's sending Jon into a situation that he may not succeed, he may not survive, he may be killed when he gets back to the Night's Watch. Like, Corran knows that that's an option, and yet he has to ask Jon to take his own life because it's the only possible way.
Do you think it's a solid plan?
I think it's his best plan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not much else they can
Well,
do.
because they're also really concerned at what the wildlings are doing. Like, I feel like by book 5, it's a little bit like the wildlings are important, but their plans as enemies are not as significant. But at this point in the books, it's like, what are they digging for? What are they doing? Like, it's really, we can't let them topple the wall with a horn,
Right. At this point, they don't know that the wildlings would be like willing to take the deal that they take in A Dance with Dragons, right? There's actually a genuine question of like, what are they up to and how do we stop it?
Right. Because we don't know until much later that Mance is like, we basically just want to pass go, and like get away from the crazy others. That's not on the table yet. It's still like invasion, slaughter, which is why, the Battle of the Wall is so sad to me. But the only other thing that really stood out to me in this chapter is Jon has a line that he dreamed of burning castles and dead men rising unquiet from their graves. And it's not the only reference we get to, like, zombies.
Oh, yeah, good
In
point.
these chapters. Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe zombies. Any other thoughts on Jon 8?
Yeah, real quick, do you guys think that the wildlings know Jon is a warg? And do you think that that's one of the reasons that they accept him?
Well, they say he's a warg, don't they? When,
do they talk amongst themselves? And
yes, well, Rattleshot goes, he's a warg, we should kill him. And then they go,
Rattleshot wants to kill him. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's because of Ghost.
Right.
Ghost is there. It's kind of
Yeah.
implied, I suppose,
I guess he's
for the wildlings.
I guess he's more of a threat because of that. But, like, in general, I wonder if Ghost weren't there, if they would have been willing to take him.
I think if the Grit wasn't there, then he'd just been killed.
Yeah. It's probably more the Grit than anything else.
Yeah, but the others are kind of like, they could go either way. Like, when he's against them, they're against him. And then when he, like, kills Corrin, they're like, all right. Like, they don't seem to really care. Ygritte's the one who has the strong feeling. Ygritte and Rattleshirt are the ones who, have strong feelings either way. Sarah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just, you know how the wildlings burn their dead? At the end of this chapter, they burn Corrin. Do you think they know that their dead are being turned into whites already? And do you think they remember it from the long night 8,000 years ago and they kept doing it for so long that it became tradition, or it came through word of mouth that if they didn't, they'd come back?
No, I think they know.
It's so strange to the Night's Watch if they'd done it as tradition. I think it might be a more recent development.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in one of the next chapters, they say that they had a lot of troubles coming to the Frostfangs because they had a lot of white attack, I guess.
Yeah, but just practicality, like being up there in the cold, it's hard to dig a fucking hole.
A random mat appears. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like it could go either way. Like, sociologically, it would make sense. They need to burn a lot of shit anyway, so whatever. But yeah, I mean, I do think that there is reference to, like, oh, we have to burn bodies now, like, either way, because otherwise they're going to come back and kill us.
I think it's interesting either way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't really like the wildlings, but I guess that would be a bit of a shock to find that was happening. Although, I guess they probably hadn't been doing it, because otherwise there wouldn't have been whites.
Yeah, but you have all the rangers who are going in, and they all die and they don't get burnt. Or if people, as a group, everyone dies, no one would be there to burn everyone, and then they could come back.
True.
Right, if, like, they hit, like, a critical mass where it's just, like, the whites are just taking over. But if one person dies, like, Tormund didn't burn his son, and he had to put him down.
When did you get
Well,
here,
I think
Matt?
he died in the night.
I just not find.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, like, or no one was there to burn him, sorry.
Yeah, I thought that was like he died in his sleep and then, like, woke up and, like, nobody had a chance to do it. But yeah, anyone else? John, I can hear Tanya being like, "Move on."
Yeah. I just had one thing. There's a line in here where he says he's having a dream, I think, and he's thinking about his oath as a Night's Watch, and he says, holding tight to the words in his mind, praying that his father's gods would give him the strength to die bravely. And the use of his father's and not, like, the old gods. Do you think that either he just doesn't believe in that kind of stuff, or he doesn't fully believe in their religion because he thinks he's also got ties to the South and the Seven?
Maybe it's because he's a bit reserved about his religion, so he still thinks of it as being a bit foreign. And then later on, I think he thinks of it as being more his religion later on in, I think it was in Dance, in one of his chapters when he sees Mel and Ghost and links the two and the heart tree in that chapter.
Isn't he, like mixed religion? Because Catelyn was a Seven and Ned was the old gods, right? So
yeah, but
it would
not
be
John.
I don't think Kat would have cared which way John worshipped.
Yeah.
I think it's just...
Yeah, but all the other kids were probably raised, like, dual religion, right?
Yeah, well, like,
kids were,
Sansa is straight up Faith of the Seven, I think.
But she still goes to the old god sometimes to pray, though. Or
No, she never. She doesn't go there to pray. She just goes there to, like, be alone.
Yeah, but that's she takes a lot of comfort in the gods.
Get away with.
I mean, there's no ritual. Like, you don't we think of it as like, oh, you go to the gods to pray, but, like, for all we know, the old gods are like, oh, you're here, cool, check, like, whatever.
Well, it's always described as a very personal religion, isn't it? It's like each person There's no scepters to give a sermon or something. You deal with it in your own way.
Yeah, it's true. It was just curious. I wonder, because, and Tanya will hate me for even dragging any of this out, but he's so always thinking and meditating on his mom and that whole situation. So I wonder if over time, because he didn't really have Catelyn to fill those shoes and be motherly to him, he has built some loose identity in his mind, and he kind of thinks about being the Faith of the Seven because he thinks about, my mom was a Southerner and maybe that's what she would do.
Could be.
Psychologist Jon Snow.
I think it's just kind of like that they're connected in his head. He is, Ned and the old gods are connected for him, and that's who he prays to. So, I mean, we know that religion means a lot to him because he said his words in front of the Heart Tree.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, I think we should move on and tackle Jaime 8, which is coming to us from Marie. No, not Jaime 8,
yeah.
Jaime 2. On September 29th, 299, we reach the end of the Kneeling Man with Jaime 2 and Storm of Swords. This is a whopping 13 chapters.
Jaime, Brienne, and Cleos Frey arrive at the inn of the Kneeling Man. It looks abandoned, and Jaime convinces Brienne to stop, spend the night in a bed, and learn what happened there. So there are horses in the stables, which Jaime doesn't fail to notice. At the door, they find a boy of 15 waiting for them with a loaded crossbow. Upon seeing the silver coins that Brienne flashes at him, the boy tells them to leave their weapons outside and lets them in. There is a man inside. He is suspicious and abrupt as he explains that he and his wife, who for some reason isn't here, found the innkeep dead and took over the place. When Cleos tells the man that they are going to King's Landing, he tells them that Stannis is outside the city walls with 100,000 men and a magic sword. As ever, we are blessed with Jaime's inner thoughts as he ponders about Stannis' magic sword. The man who isn't an innkeep tells them to avoid the King's Road and that the Trident isn't safe either. Apparently, the Lightning Lord and his outlaws roams the area, which gives us a quick reminder of Lord Beric and Thoros of Myr. They should go by land, but for that they need horses. As it happens, there are 3 in the stables, and Brienne buys them, way over price, according to consumer advisor Jaime. The man suspiciously insists that they stay for the night, but Brienne refuses, with Jaime's approval. Cleos is really disappointed, but no one cares nor listens to him anyway. Ever giving, the man warns them about a road they really shouldn't take. So they finally leave and arrived at a crossroad. Brienne chooses the road where the man warned them against. Cleos doesn't understand because the innkeep told them to shun this path, but he was no innkeep, as we know, since the man is only referred to as the man who wasn't an innkeep in the chapter. Brienne explains that the man may have been sending them into a trap. Jaime is pleasantly surprised and had reached the exact same conclusion. So they ride half the night without trouble, then stop. While Cleos sleeps, Jaime and Brienne have a chat. She reminds Jaime of Tyrion for some reason, which pushes him to actually try and be nice. But Brienne keeps calling him Kingslayer. In his inner thoughts, we learn that he became a Kingsguard because Cersei asked him to, so he could be near her always. As it happens, nothing worked as planned. Tywin resigned from being Hand of the King, and Jaime is left at King's Landing with the Mad King. Jaime taunts Brienne by saying that she is a Kingslayer too, and we get a glimpse of the suffering of Brienne for not being a man nor a knight, and how envious she is of Jaime, who had all of that. Jaime drifts away in his own thoughts, and we see him kill the Mad King. We see the arrival of his father's men, and finally Ned Stark. So Jaime then goes from thoughts to nightmare until Brienne wakes him, and they ride before the sun is up. And that's the end of the chapter.
Well done.
Thanks.
I love and hate Jaime so much at the same time.
Me too. I love each and every one of his own thoughts. I mean, I love reading his chapters. It's just so fun.
He has.
And then you remember he pushed Bran out the window.
And
And it always comes back down to that.
Exactly.
Man, I don't even like Bran that much.
Yeah, but you sport Spurs, no one cares.
Oh, jeez.
What did I say about football? It's funny. I remember Jaime being way more of an asshole than he is in this chapter, actually. I mean, I'm sure he does it again. You know, I'm sure he was in his first chapter and is later, but like, I like in my mind, it's very much like pre-amputation Jaime I hate and post-amputation Jaime I love. But like, I forgot that there's a bit of a blend here.
Yeah, it's also because we reread all of this with all now loving Jaime, and so we kind of read more into it that there is. I mean, we notice stuff like he tries to be nice to Brienne and stuff like that. Where I mean, the whole chapter he also thinks about murdering her and things. So
No, that's the thing is that you read him and you're like, I like this character. How did that happen? Because he's such a hateful, violent person.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask, because the whole redemption arc thing with Jaime is so sort of pervasive in the fandom, at what point did people start to like him in the series? I don't really remember when it changed for me.
It's Harrenhal.
For me, it's his first chapter after he gets his hand cut off, and you see him, because for me that's an intrinsic change. I mean, obviously it is, but like psychologically, it affects him immediately. And he is at Brienne's mercy and forced to reckon with her as a human who is stronger than he is. And like, I feel like the change begins there. There's obviously still work to do, but like that's where, you know, like it's, and I mean, I think it's very affecting. There's that word again. But seeing somebody laid so immediately low and the contrast is so extreme that, yeah.
It's funny because like Theon gets worse mutilation done to him, and I don't sympathize with him at all. And I wonder if it is just the girl in me liking the possibility of a romance between him and Brienne. I'm like shipping that hard, or is it that
there is no
because reading it again, like on the one hand, I go back and I go, how the hell do I like this guy? He's horrible. But there are, like Michal, you're saying, it's like it is a blend, and on the other hand, I'm like, oh well, he is lightening up a little bit already. Even it's only with the second chapter we're getting of him, because there are nice things he does. You know what I mean? He's like two sides of a coin.
Yeah,
I think with him we're seeing glimmers of him changing a tiny bit, or at least considering, hey, maybe I shouldn't be such a dick to you, Brienne. You remind me of Tyrion a little bit, but he's still really mean to her. Like, he doesn't express being kind to her, he expresses very harshly to her and talks and always calls her wench.
I mean, to be totally fair, she is basically his captor at this point, so I don't necessarily expect him to be, like, super nice to her.
Hand-holding nice.
Yeah.
and she's definitely not nice to him. I mean, not saying that he doesn't deserve it, but she indeed keeps calling him Kingslayer and insulting him and stuff like that. So it's understandable that he's annoyed at that. I mean, I understand. I think what I like about him and why I'm already touched by him in these chapters is it's how he thinks about Tyrion and how he when we get the story of how he became a king's guard and how he came to kill Aerys and stuff like that, and when he says the white cloak sold me, not the other way around, you see that like Arya, he wasn't destined to be a violent and arrogant guy. He's just something got him there, and we already see that this early. I mean, it always comes back to Aerys, and he's sick of it, so he chooses to just be a prick about it.
Yeah, I mean, I and it's good writing. It's just funny that like Jaime perceives himself as, I mean, really, almost every character in the series perceives themselves as deserving of sympathy. Like Jaime considers himself as suffering a continual wrong, from the moment anytime anyone even brings up Aerys, he's like, you're wronging me, even though they really have no way of knowing anything else,
Yeah, for sure. But he was like 17, something like that. And I mean, no one ever gave him a chance to. I mean, no one ever believed that it wasn't such a bad act. And when he thinks, I even had my golden armor and not the white one, and no one ever remembers that. It's like it's not a big detail, and it's normal that no one remembers that. But he wants to justify himself, at least, not with good justifications, not always, but. And of course, he loves himself very much. We all agree on that.
Well, I mean, he also doesn't tell anyone. He just kind of expects them to have, to have sympathy for them without an explanation.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not saying people would, not still be dicks to him, but
he'd at least have a chance if he told people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and when he does, Brienne is sympathetic to what he's saying. She is responsive when he eventually does.
Yeah.
Express all these things.
Yep.
I think there's something about Ned being the first one to find him. And
well, it wasn't. It wasn't Ned.
It was
right. There are
Craig
other people in the room, right? When Ned comes in. But he fixates on, Ned walks in and then is judging him immediately. And I think he brings that up a couple times throughout the series.
And I understand why that would bother him. I mean, Ned is kind of judgmental, and I mean, obviously, why in hell did he sat on the throne? But
well, in his mind, he'd expect Ned to be maybe grateful because this is the man who burned his dad and strangled his brother.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
And as well, his fellow Westermen actually give him the choice of declaring who's going to be king, and instead of choosing his dad, he's just like, no, we'll wait. Whoever gets here first gets it, and then that's Ned. So Robert becomes king.
That's what I was going to say. I love how he kind of peruses his options right there.
Yeah.
Maybe in the memory, his actions have made further worse because Tywin commits such atrocities there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of lumped in as the Lannisters fuck shit up.
And there's a line that they weren't even surprised to see him because he'd been Tywin's son so much longer than he'd been a member of the Kingsguard, even though that's not at all connected to the reasons why he killed Aerys.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do think that there's obviously a lot of bad judgment and a lot of lack of empathy that's going around, but I mean, that's a theme in the books, and as much as I feel bad for Jaime, and I do, I'm also a bit there are people who, I mean, even look at Tyrion, who I don't have a ton of sympathy for. His entire life is being judged for things that he literally can't help. And Jaime, you actually did kill Aerys, so deal with it.
Yeah, for
There's
sure,
definitely,
for sure.
Yeah, and he pushed the kid out of the window.
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I don't want to litigate that now, but I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree. Yeah, there are people who have it worse than Jaime, but I do want to add that I guess it seems to me that he doesn't tell anybody, but I think it would make it worse. You know what I mean? And it goes back to the fact the Lannisters commit so many atrocities that it seems to me, it seems obvious that it would sound like an excuse if he tried to tell anybody the details.
But it's provable. I mean, there's wildfire hidden underneath the city.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
It's not like Jaime went around and planted that wildfire,
Yeah.
Obviously there are still going to be people who don't agree with him and don't believe him, and he might still have wound up this cocky, bitter asshole.
Yeah, but he could do more than nothing, and he could do more than just say, "Oh, but I had a good reason," because then he could lead people out there and show them the caches of wildfire. Yeah,
definitely. And then he'd be a hero, which is, I think, secretly what he wants to be to people.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Dayne was to him, and Barristan Selmy is to so many young kids.
Yeah. And I mean, Jaime has a great line that I didn't, because Brienne is you soiled the white cloak, and he's like, I didn't soil the white cloak, the white cloak soiled me, which is a great line, but
it's really affecting.
I think George had wonderful writing in this chapter. It was phenomenal reading, and it's so enjoyable to read, even though a lot of shady stuff's going on. It's so enjoyable.
Yeah.
At least I love reading this chapter.
That's the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Michal, you weren't done, right?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say that, I don't 100% buy it, because it wasn't Jaime acting as a Kingsguard. I feel like his years as a Kingsguard did, being like having to serve Robert and like being stuck in this secret tryst with Cersei and like the bizarreness of that and the nihilism that Jaime kind of developed. But I don't necessarily think it's like, you know, I don't necessarily think it. Well, I mean, maybe it is because of his like whole like conflicting oaths thing, you know.
Yeah, I think it's mostly in reference to the conflicting oaths, because I think like at the time he joins the Kingsguard, he thinks like Brienne, where he's thinking like, you know, his duties are all about upholding the weak, and like then he even with Arthur Dane, he has to like stand outside Aerys's bedchamber while he rapes his wife and like say nothing.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not what made Jaime rotten. What made Jaime rotten was those years, I think, anyway.
Right. I think he might think that's what made him rotten, though. Right? Like, in
true.
his mind, like, the betrayal of his oaths, the first oath he betrayed were his oaths to be a true knight, and he betrayed them by, you know, for some number of years, honoring his Kingsguard oaths over those.
Yeah. I also just want to shout out Brienne's line when Jaime says he ought to pay us for taking the white horse off his hands. And Brienne says, "Don't speak discourteously of your horse, sir."
Yeah, I love this.
God, Brienne. I forgot how Brienne you are.
Brienne is my favorite.
I love her.
I think that's the thing about this chapter. That's why I love Jaime so much. It's because any interaction he has with anyone, I mean, his dialogue with that's the previous chapter and stuff like that, it's also funny to read. And of course, rationally, I totally agree with you that we shouldn't defend him. I shouldn't defend him. But then I read this chapter and I'm just like, I just love reading him.
I think I said it before, but I think he's just a very enjoyable character to read. He's my favorite character to read for some reason, but
He is
definitely my favorite.
His chapters fly by.
Yeah,
they're wonderful to read.
Like, I think this chapter, especially his dream sequence, and then the end of it with how it all ended when the sun rose. I think it reads like a fairy tale to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I found with reading all of his backstory.
Well, is Jaime like the fucked up fairy tale prince of this story?
Yeah. I mean,
He's a bad boy, but he wants to be good.
If this all goes the way I want it to go, it's going to be like they're going to tell stories of Sir Jaime of the Golden Hand and Brienne the Beauty, you know, and I don't know, but.
All you girls are swooning at once.
It's gonna happen, okay? They're in love. It
sounds like some erotic fan fiction waiting to happen.
I think it's already happened a lot.
Oh yeah, always. This was happening before people had Game of Thrones to like hide their Song of Ice and Fire fan fiction underneath. Okay. Oh, I have a question. Who is setting the trap, and what is the trap? And because I didn't get that. I was just like, oh, this is...
So Brienne made a good move. She spotted it well.
Yeah.
Right, but who was setting the trap?
Do you want me to explain?
Yeah,
go ahead.
So the innkeep, I'm using quotes, air quotes, he keeps trying to keep them there, and he's not wanting them to go, and when he does let them go, he says, "Oh, where are you going?" So you're going... Don't go down the river. You don't want to do that. Go down this road. There shouldn't be anyone there, but go down this road. And it all seems very, very sus. And Brienne doesn't... Yeah, Brienne, when they go out, Cleo's just like, why aren't they
Sorry,
going...
Sarah, what was that word?
Sus. I think that's the one you're on about.
Yeah.
Suspicious. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Australian slang.
Ooh, I like that.
We just use that
like
a
shady.
lot.
Very sus.
Yep.
Oh, I'm still going to use that now.
Cool.
Yeah. It's like we use it so much here. Sorry. I need an Australian to American translator for you people. No. So it was really suspicious, there you go, that the innkeep was so intent on having them go that way and wanting to know where they were or to keep them at the inn. So Brienne was just like, no, it's a trap. We won't go the way the innkeeper says, and we won't go the way I said I'd go. We'll go a completely different way. And Jaime thinks, yes, smart idea, Brienne. That's the way I'd do it as well, because he didn't like the innkeep either. So he has a whole group of guys down the fork is what they think who they're trying to set the trap for. These guys are.
It's the Brotherhood.
It is the Brotherhood, right?
Yeah, I think it's the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
We have an explaining in the later chapter when they arrive with Hot Pie and Arya and Gendry, I think. And I'm even wondering if they don't mention this specific time where they sent people their way and they never arrived, and it would be Jaime and Brienne, but I'm not sure if we
That
actually.
sounds
they
right to
did.
me.
It
The book, it's next
does.
chapter that Arya turns up at the end.
Yeah, and I thought that maybe the wife isn't there because she's been sent to tell the others they're coming your way, or just come back and you'll find them at the inn, because that's why he wants them to stay for the night. And I thought that maybe that was the reason why she isn't there, the wife, I mean.
That's a way better reason than what I thought, because I had this whole theory that they actually murdered the wife and were eating her.
Oh no, she turns up
I like
later.
yours better.
Yeah.
No, I think,
Wait,
I think
wasn't
she
she
was,
helping
she
someone
was
give
with the
birth?
Brotherhood, yeah.
Wasn't she helping someone like give birth? Like,
Oh, maybe, yes, that might be
I
a
feel
thing.
like that
But she definitely turns up afterwards and bakes pie and bread with hot pie.
A merry little
But why can't it
scene.
be cannibalism?
Hey, I don't
It's
think
Josie
you're
bread.
out of the realm of possible George writing with that, Sarah. So I don't blame you at all.
No, I'm like,
Everyone's just cooking everyone in pies and sleeping with their siblings around here, so it's good. Sorry.
yep. I just thought it was so weird and suspicious, and I'm like, are they going to try and kill Brienne and all these Brienne, Jaime, and Cleos as well? Is that why they're
Yeah.
trying to keep them there?
Well, especially when you listen to the audiobook and Doitrice does the voice for the innkeeper who was not an innkeeper so creepily. Like, you know, it's just horrifying, and you're wondering, are they going to get slashed? When he's like, it smells like horse shit in here. And then I just thought it was because he figured the guy was lying. But then later when Cleo says something about horses, he's like, yeah, all those ones that left their poo in the stables. Like,
I think that was the main kind of the main clue for Jaime. Like, at least I think he mentions it. Like, and he says something at some point, like hoping that Brienne is gonna take the hint and understand that they should not stay here. Yeah.
Well, I'm like, it's so clever. I was so impressed with that because I don't think I would have noticed, like, how much time you spend in a horse stable. I don't know how much shit 3 horses make on a normal.
Well,
like, notice that there's too much shit in the barn. You know,
you and Jaime definitely don't live in the same world. I mean, it's more understandable that he notices this kind of things, but
I used to.
I have 2 real things to say though about this chapter. Like, you know, this is such a big moment. Like ending a war, you know, it's like the Treaty of Versailles being signed or something, you know, like this huge moment. And I think it's really neat here that we're getting like a kind of an inside look, like it's a dream and not a straight memory, but you're still kind of getting to learn about this pivotal player in it and what was going through their mind. And I think he gets a little pissed that people aren't really, you know, if it was the Crack-Hall man or somebody that had come in and killed Aerys and ended the war, they'd be the hero. It's just because of his oath to this king that you were going to overthrow, and this young man had to die. Like, but he saved you and he saved your war. So you're going to call him a kingslayer and, you know, forsake him. And I understand that. Like, I can sympathize with him on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't not sympathize. I just also think that, like, there's social contracts that go on, and like it's more the violation of that contract than the fact of Aerys' death. Like, yeah, it's hypocritical. Like, yeah, they were probably going to kill Aerys anyway, and obviously if he hadn't done it, then they would all be dead. But I mean, I think that's what unnerves people so much. You know, people who aren't even like that caught up in the world of honor that Ned and Brienne live in are more just like a norm has been violated, and
yeah,
you know, they don't know how to deal with that. That's very dangerous territory.
Well, because the other thing no one ever places the importance on is it's not like he was one of the, you know, people attacking Aerys and trying to overthrow him, burst into the throne room and came at him and faced him like a man, you know, or let him have a chance to yield. Jaime did actually murder him. Well, assassinated him, you know.
Well, but he had to. I mean, I think...
And I get that.
With Jaime, no one else had a choice like him. No one else had a choice to save an entire city and millions of people. And I think that's what irks him so much, is because that was his chance at honor. And, you know, Ned had maybe the easier choices in battle and things like that. And his was harder to forsake everything else and kill Ares. And I think he did it for the people as opposed to for his house or for any cause. It was to save the city. And that's why he's just, it tears him up still. And, you know, it always comes back to Ares for him.
Yeah, it should have been a thing of honor, and it was his biggest dishonor, like the reaction to it.
But then maybe that's his fault for not speaking up then. I mean, I understand he's young, 17 or something, but everyone's young, you know. Robert's not very old himself, and he's about to be king.
Right.
Yeah. I do just want to mention one other thing, and then we'll move on, I think. But I like the little stuff that's conjured of teenage Cersei, you know, spinning this supposedly master plan, you know, and then it's like, no, not so much.
Yeah.
And also diving into a lot of politics that they don't even know exist.
Cersei's the worst.
Do you mind if I say something quickly?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Did you guys pick up when I have a quote from Jaime in this chapter, and he says, "Before this is done, I'll wrap these chains around the wench's throat, see how she likes them." I actually related that back to Cersei's Valonqar prophecy, and how it says, "Your tears have drowned you. The Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you." And I think with Kevin's death, Jaime might actually be made Hand of the King, and then he'll use his chain of office to strangle her. And that's how it will be with the hands.
Yeah.
I love this theory.
Whoa.
That's awesome. I love that.
Okay, so Marie and Hannah have thoughts. So, Hannah, if yours segues, then Marie should go first, and then you'll go.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a drink real quick too, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay,
Go
it's
ahead,
really
Marie.
short though. So you mentioned earlier, Michal, the fact that we have John thinking about burning castles and people rising from the dead and stuff like that. And at the very end of this chapter, in Jaime's nightmare, he has all the dead men coming at him in flames and in wildfire and attacking him. And I thought it just echoed well to what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I noticed that too. There's more zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
This book is all about zombies, obviously.
So I just was wondering if you guys wanted to discuss really quick. We all love Jaime now, and he's had this big redemption arc, but then we have Theon, who's done not even nearly as atrocious things. I mean, he did kill the Miller's boys, but he didn't kill Bran and Rickon. So I guess it's kind of equal. But anyway, but he, to me, doesn't have that same redemption arc. And I was thinking about, had things been different for Jaime, had he been raised in a different environment, had he had Ned as a father. To me, it does seem that his nature is to be a good man, but he's from the get been set on a pretty dark path, whereas Theon had the best nurture. He had the best environment, but his nature is still to be a turncloak and a weasel.
Well, I mean, in terms of the redemption arc, I tend to think of it as, you know, they both have. I mean, I do think Theon is having a redemption arc. It's very different from Jaime's, but they're both catalyzed by an act of supposed justice that is in reality injustice. You know, Jaime's hand is cut off, and they're not equitable because Jaime just loses his hand, but Jaime's hand is cut off by the Bloody Mummers to keep Roose Bolton on their side. It has nothing to do with his prior acts. It has nothing even to do with it's only in his value as a Lannister captive. That's the only reason why that happens. And Theon, obviously, as you guys have discussed before, is tortured because Ramsay gets off on that shit. And that's it. That's the only reason why. Not because he's a murderer, not because he's a rapist, not because he's a little shit. That's the only reason. And, you know, I think almost regardless of their upbringings, I mean, it's tough to say what Theon would have been like otherwise, because his psychology is so complicated by his feelings of loyalty to the Greyjoys as opposed to the Starks. But I think that they both kind of end up in a similar place, which is completely stripped of the things that defined them before and the ability to own the things that defined them before. And they're both kind of spat out at the end of it and, thrown into different situations and react accordingly. And somehow they both seem to be becoming better men because of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
I still think had Theon been raised in the Iron Islands, he'd probably be just as bad, if not worse. I mean, it's the Iron Islands.
That's true. I mean, I think he'd be worse, but he'd probably be less conflicted about it. He'd be more of a,
Victorian.
Yeah, more of a Victorian and less of a Theon.
Sure, he was bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kidding.
Sorry, do we want to just do the Theon summary and then we'll continue talking about him? This chapter takes place on September 30th, a day after Jon's chapter, and it's 16 chapters earlier than we are reading it today.
So we begin with Maester Luwing coming in to see Theon as the Northern Scouts are seen around the walls of Winterfell. And he urges Theon to yield, which, of course, Theon completely ignores, and goes on to ask about any responses from his family, from Victorion or his father. But none have come, and so he orders more raids to be sent, and accuses Maester Luwing of just wanting to see him dead, which Luwing lies through his teeth by denying, and then urges Theon to yield again, which Theon again ignores. And all the time is going on, in Theon's mind, he's convinced of the military importance of him pinning the northern forces there to protect Victorion's flank and the neck. And when Maester Luwing again tells him to yield and to ask, Theon just doesn't ignore him this time. He just interrupts straight up and says he can't ask for mercy. Now, it's not the only time he speaks about mercy in this chapter. And in his chapter before this, he thinks about mercy a lot. And when he eventually comes back in, was it chapter 12 of Dance, there's a lot of talk of mercy there. So maybe a theme for Theon. But he tells Maester Luwing he can't ask for mercy, and then just tells him to get out. Theon then assembles the remaining Ironborn in the courtyard of Winterfell and does his best Admiral Adama impression by saying there's a line running down this courtyard and asks for volunteers to join him in remaining to defend Winterfell. And of course, initially, absolutely nobody moves. We get Theon feeling totally abandoned and alone. And then eventually we get Wex crossing over and shaming 17 of the Ironborn into joining, including Black Lauren, although the rest, including all the men who Asher brought, just leave. Theon then has a chat with Black Lauren, who sneers at Theon's cunning noose plan and asks if he can just hold the drawbridge against the entire Northern army. This is when Theon realizes that he's not here because he supports Theon. He just wants an ending worthy of song, not any sort of victory. We proceed up to the top of the walls where we can see the masses of Carewinds, Talharts, Flints, Karstarks, Hornwoods and Manderleys, and on a reread, quite importantly, no Boltons. Theon then goes out and gets a bit of attitude from Roderick and this annoys Theon, who puts on a whole victim act, like I was a prisoner of the Starks, kept against my will. To which it's pointed out that you were a guest raised with the children and given every comfort. And this prompts Theon to show his noble side by showing Roderick his daughter Beth on the walls of Winterfell with a noose around her neck. And then he denies Roderick when Roderick asks to offers himself in place of Beth. And Theon says he will hang hostages if the Northern army do not disperse by sundown, which of course Roderick, being the honourable person he is, rejects. After returning into Winterfell, Theon contemplates his fear at the impending death surrounded by people who hate him, because he's realised the staff will hate him, the Northerners outside hate him, his men don't really respect him at all. And he contrasts it to the fear he felt before the Whispering Wood when he was surrounded by friends, and he again thinks of this concept of mercy. Now, maybe understandably, Theon gets a bit moody at this whole impending death thing, and fires lots of arrows at targets, which is where Maester Luwing comes to find him. And this time, Theon doesn't ignore/interrupt him, and Maester Luwing is allowed to mention taking the black. We then get quite a quick internal monologue from Theon where he goes from rejecting it to convincing himself it would be the greatest decision of his life and he would end up being Lord Commander and get his own ship and be able to laugh at Asher. And this whole great revolution is interrupted by an Iron Man, Crom, calling down from the walls that the Northmen are attacking each other. We then witness the battle/betrayal and massacre where the Boltons surprise attack the Northern army at odds of 5-1, or at numbers of 5-1. which I think Theon points out. And then a knight in a red helm approaches the gates and presents the corpses of Leopold Tafhart, Clay Kerwin, and Sir Roderick. And then, because this guy is clearly trustworthy from what Theon has seen of him, he lets him in. And then, of course, Redhelm turns out to be Ramsay Snow, and Theon continues to demonstrate his fantastic powers of perception, because the clearly not sinister guy in armour designed to look like a flayed human is let in for a chat. And as we all know, this ends really well for Theon. And then we kind of get in the last paragraph, like, through Theon's eyes, the sack of Winterfell, we see, Chaos Maester Lewin getting stabbed in the back with a spear. And one of the last things we hear from Theon's perspective is Ramsay Snow shouting, "Save me the phrase and burn the rest. Burn it all." Which, that's Theon's last chapter for about 2.5 books.
12 years real time, right?
He missed himself.
Yeah, it's great. Like I was going to ask how, because after this point I just figured, okay, that idiot's dead. Like, was anyone? I was completely surprised when in that Reek chapter in Dance, I go, oh shit, this is Theon. Like, I totally wiped him from my mind. Like, how did other people see that?
Exactly like you.
It had actually been released, I think. It had been a spoiler chapter that had been released, but, like, I was kind of out of the fandom for those years, and, like, I think every so often I would check and see if the book was coming out, and it wasn't. And, like, that would be like, oh, and here's a spoiler chapter, and it's Reek. And I'd be like, why the fuck do I want to read a Reek chapter? No, George, no thank you. So I think it was kind of known in the fandom, but then I remember reading it. I was, like, in the car, and my mother was driving, and I, like, felt cold dripping over my entire body. It's totally fucked up.
And I was just like, shit, this is Theon.
Yeah. Sarah, were you making a point about Theon and his dickishness, or...
I was going to more make a point about Theon and his identity, because I think even at this point in time, same thing. Even at this point in time, he's struggling with his identity because he's being pulled, like, he's Theon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, but he's also a ward of Winterfell, and then he goes back to being in the Iron Islands and no one accepts him, and no one's ever accepted him really at Winterfell either, apart from Robb and the younger Starks, because they do at least sort of think of him as a brother. And then when he comes back, because he's trying to impress all of the Greyjoys and trying to win their approval, he takes over Winterfell and becomes Prince of Winterfell. And then he sees Roderick and all the people that he grew up with. They all think he's a turncoat now. And then he's being pulled every direction by everyone else. And then that's before he becomes Reek and has that struggle as well. And I think he's only, 20 at that time? So he is very young, and, like, that's my age right now. And I know a lot of people my age that are struggling with their sense of identity and where they want to be and what they want to do. And he'd be struggling just as much as people my age are, even though he has more responsibility and is in charge of other people. So I think it is understandable what he does. It's not good, it's not great, and it's really, really dickish, but you can see why he does it all.
Yeah, I mean, for me, with Theon, what I keep coming back to is almost less his identity crisis, because the more you read it, the less easy it is to ignore that. But his self-pity is what really gets me. Like, I mean, he has a line like, "Of late, it seemed to him as if the very stones of Winterfell had turned against him. If I die friendless and abandoned." No shit! You conquered the castle! Like, the intensity of his, like, I'm the good guy here, when he knows exactly what he's doing. He's not stupid. Like, I can't deal with that. Okay, who needs to jump in? Sorry.
I have to take off to run to the doctor. So, thank you, everybody, especially Milhat and Bina.
Good luck.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck.
So I mean, that's my beef with Theon primarily, and it continues in this chapter.
Well, he tries to be everyone. He tries to please both sides, and he's got to choose, and he makes the wrong choice really ultimately, and he's still choosing right to the end. As in, he still thinks he's the best option for the people of Winterfell and things like that. He's just so deluded.
That's because he's a dummy.
Yeah. I mean, it's that kind of delusion that I can't stand. And, the funny thing is, I think people forgive Theon for his delusion, and they don't forgive Cersei. And they're both equally destructive. So
Cersei hasn't been...
That's a good point.
I don't know. Cersei does a lot more, I think.
Well,
and she's
we're not far enough in the story for her to, like, have a redemption arc or feel bad for her.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
My favorite part of this chapter is when Maester Luwin's like, you can join the Night's Watch. And he's like, the Night's Watch? I have so many black clothes.
Yeah.
And then he immediately thinks about,
Bring the Krakens off of them. I'll have a horse.
yeah, he immediately thinks, he's like, oh, there's a whorehouse like by the wall. I'll be all set.
Yeah, I'll rise high.
I'd have enjoyed
That's
him and Cotter Pike, though.
But you know what? I
think
think Theon would have been a disaster at the wall because he wouldn't have changed. He would have just been the same, like, I'm always right. Anybody who isn't, like, agreeing with me is just being a meanie and they hate me. And, like, which is his entire perspective, you know, like, his entire perspective on his childhood with the Starks, you know, they actually hate me.
He would have been fine. He would have gone to Eastwatch by the Sea and commanded his own ship. Everyone would have loved him up there.
I don't think so. I think he would have been. He would have been like the guy at the.
No, that's what I'm saying. He's thinking that no one would have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're right.
Idiot.
But I think more realistically, he would have been like the guy in the prologue who is like way too young and inexperienced to lead a ranging. But like, well, what are you gonna do? He's a lord, huh?
Isn't that the point about being the Night's Watch? It doesn't matter whether or not you're a lord, so how can you have someone come in and then put them in charge of a ranging party and they're fresh off the boat, they're like 6 months in and you're like,
well, we know that
he's
Theon doesn't.
leading.
Well, I mean, it's still pretty clear that there is a hierarchy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't have worked for Theon because he wouldn't have had the weight of the I don't remember the guy's name, but they were a big northern house. It was like a big deal that like their son came. So maybe that
Royce.
was more
No,
Royce.
that's
Yeah.
the Royce. So that.
Or not Robar.
Not northern house, but a big house.
Well, yeah,
Comparatively.
people who were nobility that come to the wall have a certain amount of training and stuff too that is of more value than some like, you know, baker or, you know, townsperson just doing whatever. They
Well, like,
have
one of the
leadership
things that-
experience.
One of the first things that Benjen says to John when they get to Castle Black is like, nothing's giving to you. Like you're still like a grunt until you prove yourself. But obviously that's not the case from the prologue.
Yeah, it's not the case.
Well, no,
I mean,
it probably
doesn't
is.
the
I mean, they have,
Eldar
like,
even say like?
situation, right, where they get chosen for certain tasks and some are better suited than others. That guy was a lord's son and he probably had experience fighting, and they only have a handful of men total. You know, it's not like they have every castle full of guys.
Yeah, but he's leading the ranging more over a guy who's been on the wall half his life and a guy who's been there for like 5 years already. I mean, like, I think it's pretty clear. It's not like they would have been like, "Oh, Theon, you're here. You're Lord Commander." You know, like unlike what they do with Jon Snow.
Hated that guy and wanted him to die. So it's like, you know, like,
but like the old bear has a line. And he's like, "Yeah, I wasn't really ready for that one, but you know, his dad's a big shot." So I mean, that's my memory of it. Maybe I'm making that up, but I think
he's a knight too. I mean, that's a slight difference with Jon and Theon. That the Royce guy was actually a knight, I think, but
right.
Not that it matters that much, but I mean, it can also explain why he was higher in the hierarchy.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was a knight.
Or maybe, I mean, he showed like Benjen and Dior different colors when those things were being chosen, and then he gets out there and it's like when the cat's away the mice will play, so he's, you know, off campus with these guys and takes liberties, like Two-Face kind of status.
I think it's a PR move to have like House of Royce continue to send men up to the wall rather than like
exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if these lordlings really think that they're just going to go be with the shit shovelers, you know, of the Night's Watch and the rapists and whatever, they're not going to come. So they have to perpetrate.
Yeah, but John's a bastard, and he was trueborn.
No, as in Royce's dad goes to the wall with him, like he's feasted at Winterfell on the way, so there's someone to impress who may send them resources.
But Benjen was there when Jon was training at first.
True.
Anyway, not to make this Royce cast, but like, you know, I think that my point anyway is that Theon obviously doesn't deserve what happens to him and shouldn't have happened, but he needed some kind of impetus to change, and what ends up happening to him did provide that impetus for better and worse.
You're using big words. You lost me. Just kidding.
She's trying to do Bina's job, so she has to step up.
She really is doing a very good job.
Anyway, any other points on this chapter? There's probably a lot to say. It's pretty hefty.
Going back to what we were saying earlier with the whole Bolton Frey thing, there's that line where at the end where Ramsay's saying, "Save me the phrase." It's like, how did we not see this like alliance forming and like this could be bad because like. We see the phrase,
especially with this in the Arya chapter.
Yeah, we see the phrase going fuck off, and then we see the Boltons and the phrase working together. Like,
and the timeline, the linear reread is screwing me up even more on like when exactly was this Red Wedding plan? Like it's only making it worse for me. Like, was it now? Was it earlier? Was it later?
Well, they certainly wanted to work together at this point. But maybe Ramsay forced Roos's hand to move sooner.
I don't know. Do we really think that Ramsay and Roos are in contact right now? Because
why else would he say "save me the phrase"? Like he's not.
I don't know because he's not completely stupid, and he might think that this will give
but
him
how else does
hostages.
He know what's going on in the south? If he
does know his dad, he does know his dad's married.
Yeah, he knows little stuff like that, and he might be not completely just bloodthirsty and decide, okay, these two I'm gonna keep alive because maybe they might be useful. I mean, I'm really not sure that Roos actually wrote to Ramsay to tell him, hey, if you do anything crazy, at least don't kill Freys. I'm not sure he. I mean.
Just FYI.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like symbolism for what Theon should have done. You know, lock up the two little boys and keep them as hostages. Take them back to, he takes them back to the Dreadfort. Theon should have sent them back to the Iron Islands. You know, if he's really going to be a Greyjoy, then that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
It really stuck out to me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If Theon did send Bran and Rickon back to the Iron Islands, was there any guarantee that Balon wouldn't just have them killed? Because isn't the Iron Islands whole thing is paying the blood price and not having anything given to you? So wouldn't he think taking Winterfell, the blood price would be killing Bran and Rickon because they're the two people there?
No, he pays the iron price.
I don't know because
they took Winterfell and they're their hostages. Like Asher does the same thing with
exactly.
At Deepwood
Glover.
Motte. The Glovers. Sends the Glovers back to the Iron Islands.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that, like, I don't necessarily trust Balon with such, like, the Glovers might fly under his radar, but Bran and Rickon Stark are not going to. But I still think that, like, just in terms of the whole Theon Turncloak thing, like, if he had acted like an actual conqueror and, like, been, like a normal person and been like, okay, we're sending them, they're hostages, and then Balon kills them, I don't know if it would have reflected as badly on him, because he isn't necessarily responsible. I mean, I'm just making this up, but, like, I don't know if it would have been like, you're as responsible as your father for killing them if he was doing something else. When I think sending them as hostages would have been, I guess, within the normal realm of warfare.
Yeah, it would have been.
I really thought on a different note, I really thought that, like, Theon has that line where he's watching Ramsay and everyone, like, attack the Northerners and like, it's all eruption of blood and horrible. And he's talking about how the Dothraki think that, like, the stars are the dead. And he tells it to Black Lauren, and Black Lauren says, savages believe all manner of foolish things. And they're watching such a savage, horrific killing happen in front of them. And I just thought that was a really kind of clever juxtaposition, because Theon is just aware enough to, like, to understand the horror of what's happening. And George slips in that line as, like, and to us as the readers, obviously it stands out in a much greater contrast.
No,
okay.
No, definitely.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. It definitely does.
Cool. So, anything else? I think that's poor Beth Cassell. I mean,
yeah, poor girl.
Yeah,
she's fine.
Doesn't Ramsay name a dog after
her? Probably.
I think we don't know, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, well, it's going back to Hannah's point at the end of the Jaime discussion, I guess. But I don't think, like you were mentioning, Theon childhood with the Starks and Jaime with the Lannisters, and So I'm not so sure that Theon had such a great childhood. I mean, okay, yeah, he had a good role model in Ned, but Ned was quite cold with him, not mentioning Catelyn, who was clearly cold to him. So, I mean, it doesn't excuse him of anything, obviously. But it wasn't all happy childhood with nice people. And, I mean, he still was taken from home at 10 and taken to another family as a hostage, which he was clearly aware of. And that has to leave traces in any case. That was just my point.
Well, it's his only shield against, what he does. It's his only justification of it. I don't know if I buy it, to be honest with you.
I don't think it's enough of a justification.
I agree. I don't think it is.
I mean, my thing is, like, Theon is entitled to the way his childhood makes him feel. Like, the Starks can say that, like, we loved you as a son, we raised you as a son, like, as much as they want. And it's not Theon's responsibility to validate that if that's not the way he felt. Obviously, it's a scary situation. But as somebody who is not a child and somebody who, thinks he has a brain in his head, there is a certain amount of objective understanding that, like, oh, hey, my childhood actually wasn't that bad. Like, I get that it feels bad to me, but it actually wasn't that bad. And that Theon does not have.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not saying
I hate him. Sorry.
No. I completely agree with you. He has no insight whatsoever as to what is really happening to him. He's complaining all the time, and that's all he does. But I was just coming back to what Hannah said earlier. It's just it.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's a moving chapter, and, like, after reading it like 6 times, I finally begrudged Theon, I guess, a little bit of that, that feeling, that he felt like there was a chain around his neck or whatever. But, like, I don't know, guys.
Well, I think it's evident in how trusting Robb is of him. Like, gives him such a high place of honor in his sort of war council. And then when he turns up at Winterfell, how shocked Bran is, to be honest. Like, they really trusted him and loved him. And he just made the wrong choice, and that's what he's constantly paying the price for. And then, his identity issues come from that.
Yeah.
And, pays the ultimate price. He's dickless for the rest of the novel.
I mean, I would say more like the general torture and months of deprivation are even worse than losing your dick, but, like, whatever. It's all in scale, I guess.
Yeah.
Was he penalized?
You know what?
Oh my God.
There is just no need for that kind of wordplay. All right. Anything else? Speak now or literally forever hold your peace, because until we get to Reek. Cool. All right. So we are now going to move on to the Bran chapter, which I'll pull up the number of. Yeah, we're going to move on to Bran 7.
You guys aren't done yet?
Last chapter. And this one should be fast, hopefully. So the Bran chapter, Bran 7, takes place on the next day, October 1st, 299. It's 3 chapters later after Theon, and it is the last chapter in the published order of A Clash of Kings, because George wanted to keep people guessing about whether the boys were dead, basically. All right, so Bran spends 3 days in the Wolf Dream, hunting as summer and observing the blasted destruction of Winterfell. When he wakes up, he is depressed to be back in the blind human world in the crypts, and he tells Mira, Jojen, and Osha what he saw. With their food running low, they eventually decide to leave the crypts, with the eyes of Eddard Stark and the dead kings on them. Hodor has to force their way out because something fell in front of the door, and they survey the burned and broken remains of the castle. Bran blames Theon, but Osha spies Smiler and too many dead Ironborn for it to just have been Theon's fault. And they also find a few men wearing the flayed men of Bolton, which, is a clue. Summer runs off to the Godswood, where they find Maester Luwin dying, one last desperately cruel loss for the Stark boys to bear. He is happy to see them and realized that they had not been the murdered boys. Luwin makes Bran promise to be strong and says he is his father's son, and then he tells Osha to separate the boys and asks her for one last boon before Bran and Rickon are taken away. They join up in the yard and take what food they can from Winterfell. Osha and Rickon leave through the east gate, though Osha has to smack Rickon with her spear to get him to come with her, which may bode poorly for this relationship. Bran, Mira, Jojen, and Hodor leave through the Hunter's Gate. Our road is north, Jojen says. And then I'm just going to read the final chapter of the book because it's too pretty to paraphrase. At the edge of the Wolf's Wood, Bran turned in his basket for one last glimpse of the castle that had been his life. Wisps of smoke still rose into the gray sky, but no more than it might have risen from Winterfell's chimneys on a cold autumn afternoon. Soot stains marked some of the arrow loops, and here and there a crack or a missing merlin could be seen in the curtain wall, but it seemed little enough from this distance. Beyond, the tops of the keeps and towers still stood as they had for hundreds of years, and it was hard to tell that the castle had been sacked and burned at all. The stone is strong, Bran told himself. The roots of the trees go deep, and under the ground the kings of winter sit their thrones. So long as these remained, Winterfell remained. It was not dead, just broken. Like me, he thought. I'm not dead either. So that's how Clash of Kings ends. And
how do you know what Winterfell looks like in autumn?
That's a really good point.
I don't know. Was
Let's not
he?
make one eventually.
He's had a winter.
No, it's been like an 8-year,
No.
an 8-year summer, and he's about that age, right?
Okay, so you remember stuff from In Utero?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, how could he have seen it?
Yeah.
Well, wait, isn't it basically? I mean, yeah, they're having summer snows now, I guess, but I don't know.
Maybe he saw painting or some shit.
You done fucked up, George. Should have asked Elio.
Hand them over.
Forget
It's
it.
too unrealistic.
I can't take this anymore.
That was it. I'm out.
Yeah, so any thoughts? Bran super warging, the Dragon of Winterfell, Maester Luwin dies.
I want to talk about Maester Luwin dying.
It's so sad.
It is.
It's sad. With him dying, do you think when he gets the boys to go away and he has Osha stay, do you think he's getting Osha to kill him so he completes the blood sacrifice so it goes into the heart tree for the old gods? Because that's what I think.
No,
Okay.
I think he's asking for mercy, right?
Sorry?
I think there's like a bubble.
So you guys both agree? Sorry.
No, I think we're both just like he just thought, like he just wanted to die for, because otherwise it was just going to be even longer and more drawn out. He's already for like a
Luwin's
day.
got like a big old gods person, is he? Is he from the north? I don't know.
No.
I don't think he
He has
is.
a celestial link, so he studied magic, but I don't think he's from the north.
No, but he's lived there for however many years and would have absorbed a lot of the northern culture, though, having lived there for so long.
How many years? Because there was another maester that told Brandon to go down south, right? Or Rickard?
Yeah, who like whispered in his ear, the one that Dustin talks about.
Yeah, so he's got to be there like 15, 16 years, but that's not forever in the scheme of things.
I mean, I don't think that was on Luwin's mind, honestly. However, I think it might be interesting to think about in terms of if Bran is in the heart tree, and like communicating, if the tree might have been awakened by Luwin dying there, or the godswood might have been awakened by it.
Or even just in general, all of the weirwood net was awakened by it, really. Because isn't this the point that we start having like the wind whispered through the leaves and having what we presume is Bran going through the weirwood net? And
No,
talking
because
to people?
Bloodraven said he's been watching Bran since he was born.
No, but with Bran communicating with people at least, so maybe it gives Bloodraven and then Bran more power to be able to communicate with people rather than just watching people.
I don't know if it would work like linearly like that, because if they can go back in time, I don't know that they would be limited by a time that was like that predated a sacrifice. But
True.
I mean, it's possible. It's worth keeping in mind because obviously the trees are turned on by blood a bit. So there's that. What do you guys think about the dragon in Winterfell? In the sky, he saw a great winged snake roar, whose roar was a river of flame. And then they say, "We made enough noise to wake a dragon."
And they
I was
also
never
felt an
into this.
earthquake.
Yeah. Well, that might have been the thing falling in front of the door. But
And it could also have been the dragon getting out as well a bit too, if you follow that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
No, because I thought the dragon was always meant to be under the crypts of Winterfell, according to all the theories. But they come up through the crypts of Winterfell, and everything in there seems fine. But it's above ground that everything's toppled over, so it doesn't make sense for him to have come from under the crypts. If you read that bit,
Well, it could have been in an old.
Are we talking about dragons
tower.
and make sense?
Yes. Let us follow
You
it to
guys-
its conclusion, Matt.
Dragons come from the moon, not crypts. Get real.
I'm just saying, like, Bran talks about a tower that they haven't used and in like 100 years or something, and that tower is like really wrecked. And
Dragon.
I mean, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that, like, it's very distinct imagery, and it comes up twice.
wasn't that the oldest tower in Winterfell, like the original one? So isn't that the one me and Cersei got it on in, and Bran was always climbing? So technically, it has been used, and no one saw anything then.
It's definitely been used.
The first keep had not been used. I don't know if it was the first keep.
That's why
like,
Ned locked it off.
The first keep had not been used in many hundreds of years, but now it was more of a shell than ever. The floors had been burned inside it, and all the beams. Where the wall had fallen away, they could see right into the rooms, even into the privy. Yet behind, the broken tower still stood, no more burned than before.
I think I'm just trying to make sense of it, and it doesn't make sense. Or at least
It doesn't
I'm not
make
getting
sense.
how it
And
makes
obviously
sense.
it's like, well, then where is this dragon? I'm not like, oh, this is definitely a dragon, but I do think that there is enough interesting phraseology there that it's worth noting.
Or at least it gives it the possibility, so if George wants to bring it in later, he can, definitely.
Yeah, because when Dany loses at least one of her dragons, which she probably will, somebody has to ride another one.
Is this what's tying up Winds of Winter, the fucking Dragon in Winterfell tie-in?
Probably.
Maybe?
It's just like, damn it, I
Another
didn't make it
Mirror
work the
Needs
first time.
Didn't work in the kids' story. We'll have to put it in Song of Ice and Fire. Anything else? No? Nobody's into Bran?
I was half asleep reading it, so no.
Okay. I will just say I like the description that Bran says when he comes back into his body, and he says that when he's being pulled back, he's waking up. The dark place was pulling at him by then, the house of whispers where all men were blind. And I just thought that was a very interesting way of putting it.
Really poetic.
Yeah.
You reminded me of something. I thought it was funny that when he was being pulled from Summer, he was scared of the dark place, and it was always the dark place. But later on in the chapter, when he's leaving the crypts, he thinks of it as being where his family is, and that's his home where he'll end up eventually anyway, and he's not scared of it then, but he is coming back into his body. I thought that was interesting. So do you think it's like Summer's scared of the crypts, but Bran isn't because he's a Stark?
I mean, I think it's Bran, like, suffering the loss of senses, you know, and like the extreme sensitivity that he has when he is in summer, as opposed to, and freedom, because he can be outside, as opposed to the, like, near complete darkness, in addition to, like, losing those heightened senses and not being able to move again.
Yeah.
That would make it, you know, scary and whatever. Because, I mean, they do say, like, they're not scared of the dead. That's not what makes it scary. But yeah, I don't know. What did you guys think, like, when you first read the books? Like, did you flip through to the end to see if they were dead, or like?
Yeah, I did.
I was
going to ask. Yeah.
I was just about to say.
I glanced ahead and saw a Bran chapter. I was like, oh, phew, he's fine.
I always thought he was safe, but I never thought that he'd be hiding in Winterfell still.
Yeah. No, I watched the TV show first, so that spoiler had already been taken care of, so I knew they were safe. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm sacrilegious and young. I haven't been around forever. So.
That's fine. I don't remember, honestly. I think because my sister told me certain details about the story, but I don't remember if I knew about Bran and Rickon. But I do feel that it was very deliberate to make this the last chapter. And like, so even if you flip through, because I know, like, when I flip through, I stop after a certain amount of time. Like, I give up. And then, like, for it to just be the very last chapter was special bit of cruelty on George's part.
Yeah, I think I agree. It was definitely on purpose, and but it's also quite symbolic. You know, we started this all in Winterfell, and that's when Bran actually leaves Winterfell for real. And I think that was kind of a nostalgic thing to it. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. And also, I don't remember either if I knew. But one thing I never do is flip through and go to the end. So I think I actually thought they might be dead, but I don't remember.
You're so good. I flip.
I flip. I think a lot of people flip to the end, and like I know I flip to the end in a lot of books, and then I just look at my hard copy, and Bran's name is at the very top of the last page. So if you did flip, you'd know they're okay. So
yeah.
As much as he doesn't have them for a while, you still know they're fine.
All right. So is that all? Yeah. I'm going to call it, guys. That's the end. I'm sorry, Matt. I don't have time to stick around and argue about the holidays with you. We can maybe do that another time.
Sure.
Yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening to the Vassals of Kingsgrave Linear Song of Ice and Fire reread. You can find us on Twitter. We are at VOK Podcast. You can find us at VOKpodcast.wordpress.com. Our primary home is the Podcast of Ice and Fire forums. You just want to go down and find the tab. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Tinder. We're on Flipper. We're on whatever. Grindr. We're on iTunes. And yeah, all the places. We're everywhere. So yeah, that's us. And have happy holidays, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks
Merry
for
Christmas.